round team. So before I do that, I just want to have a quick chat about safety when passing knives around. Yeah, no throwing them at each other. But when you pass a knife around, if you're passing it around without a sheath, so knife without a sheath, the way we pass it around is like you're shaking somebody's hand. So you take the knife in what we call a forehand grip, so how we would be using the knife, and then you just flick it up. So the blade is pointing upwards, and the handle's there. So if I wanted to pass that down, then there's no risk to either of us. Yeah, and then the same back again. Like that's how we pass a knife safely. However, if it's got a sheath, pass it handle towards them with the sheath like so. And if you're taking it out, please don't grip the sheath in a full hand, because if it, for whatever reason, if it came through the sheath, it would cut your fingers. Yeah, it's not going to on these metal ones, but I've got some leather sheaths here that it could cut through the leather sheath.
Yeah. You actually hold over the top.
So when we hold a knife, yeah, we'll either hold it up near the top here, or just hold it with kind of an open grip like so. So you can see where the blade would be. So that's the back of the handle there. So the blade's going to be on that side. So obviously I don't want to be holding it here, but just hold them loose. You don't need to hold them particularly tight. Okay. Just take mine off. Has anybody got any knives on them? Yeah. If you've got them, let's get them out and have a look, and we can talk about how good they are, or perhaps any inconsistencies or anything like that. Things that we need to think about, look at.
Look at Oliver's. Yeah.
Nice wooden one. Nice wooden one.
Does this count?
Yeah, that counts.
Yay.
We can talk about wooden knives. So, I've got a couple of different sorts of knives in here. But one thing that's really important to always remember, that if you're ever using a knife, we need to have a decent first aid kit with us. Yeah. So I've got an Israeli bandage here, emergency field care, and then just because you never know, I've got a tourniquet here as well.
A what, sorry?
A tourniquet. I've got, if we go through first aid later on, I've bought all my tourniquets with me, so you can have an opportunity of hurting each other, and I'll show you how these work.
What is it like?
It's designed for stopping catastrophic bleeding. Right. Yeah, it cuts the circulation off. Knives. There are lots of different sorts of knives. They're for different purposes, etc., etc. What you guys really want to focus on, though, before you start getting into any specifics of knives, is actually just having a good all-rounder, right? Before you start worrying about special carving knives or filleting knives or anything like that, just worry about having a good all-round knife. And the best way to start is to go cheap first, right? That may seem like a kind of oxymoron in that, well, you know, you buy cheap, you buy twice, but it's better to go cheap and have a knife that you can damage and ruin, rather than spending a lot of money on a good knife when you're learning how to use a knife and then ruining it and then being like, oh crap, yeah? So one really good company is a Scandinavian company called Mora, M-O-R-A, Mora Kniven. And they make this knife here. They cost about £10. Really good knives. So the construction is what we call a half tang. So when we talk about the tang, which is T-A-N-G, the tang of a knife, the tang is how much metal is inside the handle after the blade finishes. So these knives here, I've got a broken one here, so that sits like so. You can see the metal then continues down into the handle, yeah, about halfway. So you can...
Really windy.
Was that just water?
No, that was a tree. A tree that came down. Oh wow.
Yeah. There we go. So that goes about halfway through. So you can see why it's called a half tang. Like not the most inventive of people when it comes to names. All right. Things that we've got to bear in mind. So that means that there's going to be a reduced amount of strength if we were to put the knife in any pressure on opposite its straight angle. Yeah, and that's actually how I got this blade. Is I put some pressure on in the wrong angle and just snaps out of the handle. Yeah, so that's something to bear in mind. Okay. So I'll pass both of these round so you can have a look. So please be careful. This is still reasonably sharp, this old blade. Okay, but just have a look at those.
Grab it now.
Okay.
Should we call him? Yeah, she sleeps on it. I've got another one at home, but...
Okay, so
They're about £10. It's you, mate.
Well, let's just do construction first, and then we'll talk about actually the blade itself. So then, next up from that, you have what we call a needle tang. There you can see probably why it's called a needle tang. It goes in, but rather than being the same size, it disappears off into a needle. Yeah. So you would find that in more traditional knives. Okay. So something like this. This is a traditional Finnish puukko. What it does is it goes in. There's a needle tang, and then it comes out the end, and it's normally hammered. So when you hammer metal, it obviously spreads, punches it in. It might be glued into, and then the end is covered. Just to make it look a bit prettier. It's a bit more obvious it's in Amy's knife, which may be in here. I think I dropped it in here the other day.
That feels good.
I might not have done. It's another type of Scandinavian
Ninja
knife.
stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if I dropped it in here or not. It might have been enough. Yeah, I'll find it later on. But we've got another one of these, and you can actually see the metal coming out the bottom. This is also another Mora. Mora make lots of different styles of knives. They've been making knives for hundreds of years, Mora. So this is one of my preferred knives. I've just done a bit of decoration because I got a pyro pen for Christmas, and anything that was wooden was sitting still long enough got pyroed. So that also operates on a needle tang. So the blade will come down to here, but it'll be inside, like so. Okay, nice knife, really nice and light. And then I just put some leather on the handle just because it looks pretty. Yeah. It's not all bad, but you have to understand its strengths and weaknesses. So this, once again, this will be stronger than the half tang, but it's still not as much metal in there as there could be, and then you've got risks of it, obviously, of it breaking. More often than not, these tend to break here at the actual where the blade meets the handle if you go this way. They're also quite thin blades, so you have to bear that in mind for things like batoning, which is using a knife to split wood open. So you have to bear that in mind. But I'll pass that one around so you can have a look as well. Yeah, they're quite stiff when they're stuck in. Okay. I'll also pass these ones around as well so you can have a look at these. So, what's interesting about the construction of these knives as well, so these are, as I said, these are traditional Sami knives. The Sami are the people that are traditionally inhabit Lapland, so cold temperatures. And the knife and the sheath itself has got this little piece on the bottom. What that is for is that when they've got their mittens on, there's something for the mitten to catch against so they can pull the knife out of its sheath. And they quite often use leather sheaths, not plastic or plastic ones, so that the blade doesn't get frozen inside the handle. Yeah? It's quite interesting. I'll pass those around.
That makes sense. Yeah, another branch.
Yeah, it's not in that because of the size of it and the handle because of the size of the blade. It would have to be.
Learning loads, mate. Look how handsome.
As I said, they come in all different shapes and sizes. This is another type of Mora. This is another one of Mora's knives. Got a small knife. There is this attitude, which I've fallen guilty of it in over time as well. Of you want a nice big knife, yeah, big knife, Rambo. Ugh. Actually, I think you'll probably find that a nice small knife for what you're doing with this knife is actually probably better. Yeah, you don't need a big knife to wave around or anything like that. A nice small knife for camp tasks is perfect. And then if we need any bigger tasks than that, then maybe an axe or a saw would be the job that we need. The Sami operate on a two knife process. So they have a big knife which is called a leku, which is a big, large knife, about yay big. Probably more akin to a machete, but a bit more narrow than a machete, a bit sharper. And then the small knife, the puku, was for camp jobs, and was kept quite small. Also for cutting reindeer's ears. So the Sami are traditional reindeer herders, and the way they identified their reindeer from other reindeers is they cut certain patterns into the reindeer's ears. So each person will have their pattern, so they'll be able to look and go, oh, that's John's reindeer there, I can tell by that because that's John's pattern in that reindeer's ear. That's the kind of thing. So I'll pass this around. These are also, these smaller ones quite often are neck knives as well, so people quite often have them, they hang upside down and they can just pull them out straight away from the neck.
I'm assuming the size of that
it is less than a 3-inch blade, yes. So once again, what you need to realise about the law of knife law itself is that yes, anything that's above a 3-inch blade is yes, anything that's a solid blade is longer than 3 inches or is a locking blade. So even if it's a flick knife, if it locks, that's illegal. But what it also mentions as a caveat in knife law is it's up to the officer's discretion. So if you get an officer on a bad day and you haven't got a justifiable reason, you're in trouble. Yeah? And he figures your intent, yeah. I think that's where it comes from, really. Because even this, by law, would be a legal carry blade, you could still do quite a bit of damage with that. Yeah? So I think it was an addition to that law that it's up to the, if you look a bit shifty, you're carrying a knife in Brixton High Street, which you don't need to be. Yeah. Whereas if I was on the road down here sorting the gate out and an officer pulled me over and said, why are you carrying a knife on your belt? I'm like, well, I operate in this woodlands, you know, I'm a bushcraft instructor, you know, or why have you got these axes in the back of your car? You know, well look, this is what I do for a living, just smell my clothes, you can tell it, yeah? So I'll pass that one round as well, so you can have a look. This is a little camp knife, just a little personal knife. It doesn't need to be anything particularly special, but very good for just small little jobs. Yeah. So this is your kit, you can buy these knives, you get all the bits and pieces with it, and then you can make your own knife. As you can tell, we don't bother this. Yeah, go on. So we're going to come on shopping. Don't jump the gun. Don't jump the gun. Cool. So probably your least useful knife, one that is purely more for decorative reasons or really kind of pocket reasons, would be anything that opens up, any kind of locking blades. For kind of decent use, it's not useful at all. So you can see there that the blade stops just as it gets into the handle. So any kind of wiggle room in that direction, that's just going to break. Yeah? It's going to snap instantly. And one thing, of all the stuff that we've gone through this weekend so far, you know, you can build shelter, you can make fire, but without a knife, you're pretty much stuffed. If somebody said to me, you're only allowed to take the clothes you're wearing and one item with you, it would be my knife. Because I can make everything else with a knife, but I can't make a knife. Yeah? Finding sharp edges is quite difficult. So yeah, that's a little flick blade. The way you put this one in and out, it is a locking one. So you just push on the back of the handle, then it closes then. Pass it around.
I'd like to try that, because I'd like to see without the prints.
So do you recommend the orange ones as a first buy then?
This is a good first buy. Good first buy. Yeah, this is what I learnt with. We're going to talk a little bit about the construction of the knife from the blade up in a second, because that's quite important. But I'm going to cover it all as a one-hour rather than do everything at the same time. I'll just do kind of the construction, then we'll do the actual blade face itself, and two separate subjects.
Is there things that we should or could be doing to practice with a knife?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Use it.
On what?
Carving, little carving projects.
Yeah?
Yeah, you'll cut yourself. There's only one way to learn how to not cut yourself.
Yeah.
Cut yourself.
Yeah. So with that knife there?
I've got scars all over my hands from where I bought myself a knife and went, I'm going to carve a spoon.
Okay.
So I got a piece of wood and I carved a spoon.
Right.
The spoon promptly went in the fire because it was like, well, I'm not going to use that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I cut myself in the process and I learned, okay, that's a bad idea. And then I went and had some formal kind of training, and then realised, oh, actually, there's some things that you do and don't want to do.
Right.
But I'll cover using a knife and knife safety in a minute. I've got some here that I'm going to dish out. So if you want to get in a minute, if you want to go and find a stick and just put a point on it and get a feel for it, then we can do that in a second.
Cool, keep going.
Okay. Right, so finally, what we would class as probably the strongest construction of blade would be, so we've had the half tang, we've got no tang from a flip blade, we've got a needle tang, then we're looking at what we would class as a full tang blade. So that is where the metal of the blade starts at the point and finishes at the bottom of the handle. And what you do then normally is add what we call scales to the knife. So they're just put onto the side and shaped to make them ergonomical to the hand. Yeah? So this is a full tang blade. Still quite sharp, so be careful. It's never been used, that's why I never built it. I just bought it for show and tell kind of purposes. So this is my personal knife here. Whoop, careful. Took all the weight out, didn't I?
It's a full tang.
So this is a full tang. Yeah, full tang. So the metal starts at the top and finishes at the bottom. So this is my personal knife, which I'll pass around. Apologies for the grubbiness of it. I've been in camp for 2 days, so it's going to be filthy. So this is designed as an all-rounder knife. So it can be used for batoning. So you can use it to smash this into wood, to split wood down, etc., etc. It's not something you would chop a tree down with, but for smaller camp tasks where you don't want to be getting the axe out for every job, this can be done to do some of those smaller camp tasks. But yeah, it's also got a slight curve in it as well, which helps, and also a very shallow curve to it. Quite often, this is one of the things I see. Actually, no, I'll cover that in a minute, actually, because that's on blade, on the actual blade construction. But I'll pass that around. Please be careful when you pull this one out. It's a leather sheath, and there's nothing protecting on either side, so it may come out. Be careful. Yeah, that's the one you can knit. Yeah, that will come after you if you knit that one.
It feels nice anyway.
Yeah, I actually bought that knife when I first kind of started getting into using knives, and I found it quite heavy and too big for my hand. I've got quite small hands, so I actually never used it. And then I kind of, as I got stronger and I got the muscles in my hands got stronger, I was able to pick that knife up and be like, oh, actually, I feel much more comfortable with this knife now. It is a building process. You don't go into the gym and put 100 kilos in a bar and just try and deadlift it straight away. You've got to build up to it, which is why I'd also recommend using something which is a bit smaller, a bit easier in the hands. And you get used to it and you build those muscles up.
Okay.
It was an expensive knife. Whetstone, Japanese whetstones. I'm gonna, yeah. While I'm passing that around, I'll just go and get all the sharpening stuff up.
This is the one not to use.
You okay?
Right. So there are other specialist types of knives as well. So when we're looking at like carving knives, which I stupidly didn't bring any of my carving knives with me, carving knives tend to be much thinner. Fat at the end, and then they go down to a much thinner point. They're a lot shorter as well, because you don't need a big knife, you're just taking material away. So if you want to get into things like carving, this is a good thing to start with, but then as you get into them you can start building up, and Mora make a good selection of carving knives as well for starters. They also make crook knives. So this is a knife for kind of more delicate carving. We use it for making things like bowls in spoons, and bowls in cups, and bowls in bowls. Yeah, so it's used in a kind of scooping action. So I would hold the spoon, the bowl of the spoon in my hand, and work my way through like so. Okay, but we're not going through carving today, so I'm not going to go too much into that. But just to show you that there are different knives for different jobs. Yeah, these are a pain in the arse to sharpen. Wet and dry paper is the kind of recommended process. Because you're only really carving with them, you're not doing any kind of jobs, they don't need too much sharpening. You just need a little hone at the edge. Cool. Right, so while we're doing that, I'm just going to pass this knife around here. This is just a little knife that I've got. It used to be one of my knives. The reason I stopped using this one, actually, is because the sheath stopped working very well. So, it's a nice little knife, sits on the belt, but the sheath doesn't really hold it in anymore. It was a poorly designed sheath. So I'm going to pass this round, and what I want you to have a look at is what is going on the actual cutting face. Okay? And then I'm going to pass another one behind it. Pass this one back again, and I want you to have a look at what's going on the actual cutting face of this one. So the actual blade itself. Have a look at the difference, because that's what we're going to talk about next. And actually, can I send your one round as well? And I want you to just look at the cutting face. So the actual, really look down and use the light to reflect it off so you can have a better look. And then I'm also going to pass Steve's knife around as well. And I want you to have a look at the cutting face on this blade as well. Because the cutting face is quite important, okay? Especially for longevity of a knife.
What are we looking for?
It's not bad. That's what I'm not telling you. I want you to just have a look and then I'll tell you what you saw. Yeah. It's not bad, it's just you're definitely giving yourself an uphill challenge to start. No. Yeah. So just looking at what the blade is doing at the cutting face, what is the blade doing?
Is this your 4,500 one?
No. And I do not. 4 to 500. Yeah, sell it. Yeah, you can buy it for £5,000 if you want.
From this distance, you can hear a completely different thing.
we think it's for breaking stuff.
James.
Yes.
How about fiberglass knives?
No.
No. They're good in the kitchen.
They're great in the kitchen, and so is ceramic knives great in the kitchen, but they're brittle, they break really easily. And fiberglass, if it shatters when you're doing something and you get fiberglass in you, you're in trouble. Yeah, they're just not strong fiberglass. They'll splinter and break. Just good old 012 tool steel. Just can't go wrong. Yeah. But it depends. Carbon steel I prefer. You can get stainless steel or carbon steel. They both have their advantages and disadvantages.
One of those knives, you know the ones that I call them ninja knives, but it's funny about the right name. But they're made of metal. They don't have a handle made of anything.
Oh, okay. So if you're looking at a knife that's got anything like a paracord handle or anything like that, no.
Even though that's almost a full tang knife.
Yeah, it is essentially a full tang knife. But the problem you've got there is if you process a rabbit with that knife, that paracord is just going to absorb all that blood. The minute it gets wet, that knife is going to become almost dangerous to use. Yeah. Whereas a wooden handle or a rubberized handle is going to have some grip to it even after it's wet.
Where they try and bolt two products together.
Yeah, and it's also playing on that whole kind of like I mean I've had this conversation with I've worked with kids that have come from county lines gangs and things like that. And, they're looking at these knives and they've got all the pointy bits on them and they're big and they're bent. I'm like, what are you doing? Like that knife is no good for what you want it for. No good for what you want it for. You stick that in somebody, it's going to get stuck. You've got a knife with a pointy bit on it. You stick it in somebody, like a serrated area on it. You put that in somebody, it's going to get stuck.
Well, you've already dissed it because it's a flip out.
I knew you were going to say that.
Exactly.
They're not bad flip out knives, but they're not that wouldn't be my sole knife. That would be something I would have in my pocket, and I'd be like, oh, I just need to cut a bit of string.
It's like a multi-purpose.
Yeah. You need to have it backed up with a decent knife. Even packed up with something like that. Yeah, something that's strong. Cool. Yeah, so what we're looking at here as these knives go round, did you notice, as the little one come back in?
Well, we've noticed that one.
That was just coming round. So what did you notice about the two different blades, specifically between these two whilst this one's going round? Because this one's very similar to that one.
That one you've got in your hand seems to be beveled.
Yep.
That one is curved, but there's a bevel on the edge.
Yep. Yeah, and then this one here will have a slightly different bevel. It's got a secondary bevel.
Does it make a difference the point where the
Not really, but it's all to do with the construct. This is all to do with sharpening. So
what about this here?
yeah, once again, that's one of those kind of like, oh, it's a survival knife. Put the stuff on the back. It's not necessary. It's meant to be for grip. But if you know how to use a knife, that's not going to add you any grip at all. Your thumb should never be on the back of the blade. And if you did use it, that's just going to shred your thumb to pieces. So it's all gimmicks and things like that. And that's what you have to look out for. A lot of knives these days, they're all covered in gimmicks. It's all about, this is a survival knife. The handle is hollow and you can put a fishing kit in it. But the minute you hit it against a tree or something like that, the blade snaps. You know? You know, oh yeah, but Rambo uses it. But Rambo's a fictional character, you know, who even if he broke his knife, the prop master goes, here's another one, you know. So anyway, and his knife is probably rubber, so he doesn't hurt anybody. So what we were looking at these knives here, so you've got a blade here that kind of comes up the metal and then it just comes to one singular point. Smoke's tended, it's my turn now, there we go. So that's what we call a Scandi grind, short for Scandinavian, which is ironic really because it was actually invented in Sheffield, but hey ho. But it's called the Scandi grind and you find that on a lot of Scandinavian knives. When it comes to sharpening, this is a really nice, easy knife to sharpen. You've only got one bevel to think about, flatten it across a sharpening stone, and away you go. Yeah, that's it, simple as that. Yeah, so we're looking at it here. Looking in this direction, so it goes flat and then it angles up to one point. Yeah, makes sense? So yeah, and that's how we test the knife, is we always look down the blade like so. That's how we always look at what the condition of a knife is in. We're looking for like reflections of light on the blade. Whereas this one here is what we call a concave blade. So we've got flat piece here, then it curves in like so, and as it gets to the top, it angles very steeply, or very shallow actually I should say, to a point. That is going to be a really difficult knife to sharpen. You've got a really tiny blade edge that you've got to try and get onto a stone of some description, and it's not going to maintain. You find this type of blade on kitchen knives normally, so that when it goes blunt you throw it away and buy a new one. Yeah, they don't get me wrong, they're very sharp, they just don't last very long, so that's your disadvantage there. And then if we look at Steve's knife over there, and that is what we call a secondary bevel. So it's flat, then it has a slightly shallower angle, and then it goes quite sharp to an end. So it's a good knife, but it is going to be difficult to sharpen because you only want to sharpen that singular piece at the end. So if he laid it flat on a stone, he's got to lay it flat, angle it onto that the second bit, and then again onto the actual cutting face, and that's going to be quite hard to maintain. So
damage the knife if you're trying to sharpen it?
You won't damage the knife, but you can change the cutting face and then it won't sharpen properly. Yeah, which is actually to the point of tears has happened to this knife here. I had it professionally sharpened because it's always nice to do that sometime, and the guy that sharpened it did not understand knife construction at all, and he's actually sharpened a second bevel onto this blade. Yeah, I nearly burst into tears when I saw it. I nearly burst into tears. So you can, I'll pass it around again so you can have a look, but if you hold it up against the light, you can see you've got the flat of the blades, then you've got what is meant to be the cutting face, so that steep angle down, but if you hold it against the light, you can see that there's another shinier line running right along the edge, and that's the second bevel that he sharpened in. I'll be able to get it out, it's just going to take hours of sharpening to get it out.
Did you pay him?
No.
Was you supposed to pay him?
Did you cut it?
No, well, yes, I was meant to pay him, but like, he was like, oh, you can have this one on the house, and I was like, damn right I'm going to have this one on the house. Like, and then my wife saw the look on my face, and she was like, I am so sorry, like, oh my God, like, I was nearly keeling over.
So he knows he
Is that the second
You can,
one?
no, so you've got the flat bevel, then you can see what is meant to be the actual blade, and then you can see that really bright white silver line running across, and that's the second bevel that he's sharpened in. So yeah, I will be able to get it out, but it's going to take hours of sharpening. Because he was used to sharpening kitchen knives.
so good.
So he sharpened because most knives of a kind of survival attitude, they work off that small bevel because it's a gimmick and they're easy to manufacture this way. That is really hard to manufacture that bevel that way. It takes a lot of grinding to get that. This is much cheaper.
How much is that knife then?
About £450 it was.
Wow. Would you recommend Ray Mears, or is it?
Yes, I would do. Yes, I would. Yeah, I would recommend his knives. The hard part is getting hold of them. They sell out almost instantly.
What's a good like?
What about alternative? The Mora?
Good secondary is anything from Mora. Yeah, anything from Mora is a good secondary.
I don't know if you could use it because I use a sharpening stone.
Yeah, sure.
I've been writing lots of notes as well.
But I would not recommend going out and spending that kind of money on a knife right away.
Oh no, I wouldn't.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. Yeah, that's the Mora companion.
Just creates another slanting bit all across the edge. You can see.
So yeah, £475.
You set fire.
That was my
Constantly out of stock.
That's crazy. So to go from a £10
Yeah, but you can build up through it. So there's another company called Martini, as in not the same as the drink, but they make really nice knives as well, and they're a good middle zone. So they've got them on here for like 55 quid. Castrum is a Swedish company. They make some good knives. Castrum have one they've just developed in conjunction with Lars Falt, who is the father of modern survival training.
Okay.
He's the guy that wrote the book on like the Swedish survival system and things like that, Lars Falt. And he's got some really good books if you're looking for some good books.
For the average person like us, you only spend
Yeah, so let's have a look at the bevel. Yes, there you go. So this is it's a Helle knife, so it's another Scandinavian knife. Anything from the Scandinavians is pretty good because they use a good bevel. Yeah, so Helle is another brand, Helle. They make some good knives too. But anything that's made by the Americans, no.
Why do the Scandinavians make good knives?
The Scandinavians do make good knives.
Why?
Why? Just because it's still a culture of using the knife as a tool. They have a long history. They also arguably make the best axes on the planet. It's just a long history of using it, and that industry is still strong today. Still strong today. Still got a lot of history. Granfors Burks, who make good knives, have been around for like nearly 500 years, or something stupid like that. Been making axes for 500 years. I think that's it looks like a Gerber knockoff, if I'm being honest. And I wouldn't buy anything from Gerber anyway. Yeah, so I think. Yeah, so I would recommend anything with a Scandi grind, so a nice flat bevel. So not two bevels, something like this that just goes up. And anything made by the Swedes or the Norwegians or anything like any Scandinavian brand, they normally use a Scandi grind. So they're worth it. Thickness of the blade depends on what you want to use it for. This is a camp knife. This I would use for a little bit of sharpening, maybe some kitchen prep, cutting some string, processing a little bit of firewood. I would not use this for batoning.
Yeah, no, perfect.
keep a knife separate from food.
No, I don't care. Don't care, unless you're doing something dodgy with it. It's just scratching your ass with it. It's not too much of an issue. Just clean it off quickly. One little thing on the actual metal of the blades. So the great thing about these Mora companions, well, one thing to bear in mind with the Mora companions, if you're going to use this as a starter knife, is they come in two types. You can have stainless steel or carbon steel. They both have their advantages and their disadvantages. Carbon steel is really hard to sharpen because it's harder, but it holds an edge much longer. Stainless steel is easier to sharpen, but it blunts quicker. It's a bit softer. And then maintaining the knives, stainless steel is obviously stainless steel, whereas a carbon steel knife, if you get it wet and put it in your sheath and forget about it, when you pull it back out, it'll be rusty. Yeah? Which has happened to, you can see there's a couple of these. Yeah, you can see this happen to this one here. So that's a carbon steel blade, and that's what happens. And that will dull the blade. Anything like that will dull the blade. Yes, it will come out when you sharpen it, but it's just, a case of you don't want to be like needing your knife in anger and then going, oh God, I haven't looked after my knife. Yeah? So when I normally go out with my knives and maintaining my knives, apart from sharpening, I also take So I take a little bit, I have a smaller one of these that goes in my knife cleaning kit. So this is canola oil, but you can use any kind of oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, any kind of thing on a stainless, on a carbon steel knife that just obviously stops it from rusting up, keeps the moisture away from it. And then I normally carry some of this, which is called Autosol. It's chrome cleaner. So you just take a little bit of that on a piece of cloth, and you can and it just cleans the knife. It's quite abrasive. Abrasive kind of paste. It's an abrasive paste, and it'll just clean your knife up if you get any kind of stains. Because even cutting certain woods will stain your knife. Oak, sweet chestnut, things like that. You cutting that wood, they have tannins in them that will stain your blade a like purpley colour. So it's just really abrasive. It's like a kind of soft sandpaper that will just clean your knife up and things like that. And this is my camp tool maintenance kit. So it's a bit bigger. I've got like polishes in there and things like that for polishing leather and things like that. If you've got a leather sheath, you also have to think about how you're going to maintain the leather sheath. You need to polish it. If the leather goes brittle, it'll crack. Water will get into the knife and it'll get worse. And if you're operating in cold environments, if you get water inside your sheath and it freezes, you're not going to be able to get your knife out of the sheath.
What's the best kind of sheath? Would it be a leather sheath?
Plastic is good. I mean, they have their advantages, their disadvantages. Plastic is great, but it can go brittle in cold temperatures. Crack, it will freeze, so it can get your knife stuck. I prefer a nice leather sheath. I think it looks good, and if you look good, you feel good, and if you feel good, you perform well. But also that it's malleable as well. It can be so leather will stretch over time, and you can wet the leather and push it back in and re-tighten the sheath, things like that. You can get Kydex sheaths. So Kydex is the type of plastic that you heat, and then they mould it around the knife, so it's like it fits the knife, that knife exactly. They're good. There's no right or wrong answer really. It's what you're after. Personally, I prefer a leather sheath. Just my personal preference. I like looking after it. I like the way it feels. It doesn't get cold. They're easy to maintain if they get damaged. Like, if the stitching goes, I can just re-stitch it. Things like that. Yeah?
I assume that's steel, not carbon steel.
I would imagine it's a steel. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say this is stainless steel. It doesn't say on it at all. Yeah. Anything that calls itself a survival knife, I normally keep as far away from it as possible. Just as a general rule, if they're calling themselves, this is the Gucci survival knife, it's normally not worth your money. Yeah? It's not worth it. It's normally the brands or the private makers that, like, the still working blacksmiths and things like that who are making knives for a living. Those are the people you want to get a knife from. Yeah, that understand knife construction because it is their livelihood, not a Chinese manufactured thing. Yeah, and I know these are manufactured en masse, but they're manufactured, with a lot of history to them, as opposed to if you get something from China, it's normally somebody's watched the most recent Rambo film and gone, that looks cool, and then digitally made it and then gone like let's mass produce it from there, and not really thought about the metal they're using or the construction of a knife, etc.
What's that brand again, sorry mate?
What's that, sorry?
That brand again?
Amora. You can see it just there on the end of the blade, on the end of the handle. That's right. They make lots of things more, and they're good starter knives, good starter carving knives. They make good crook knives and things like that. So that's something to factor in.
If you are transporting them, obviously you don't want them on your person.
No, I've spent many a time in Tesco's going, oh, I've still got my knife in my belt. Oops! It's like pulling your t-shirt down.
Just to put it in a locked box or
just tucked away. Could be in a rucksack. Well, I used to go all the way through London with an axe and a knife in my bag, just to make sure it was packed away. Yeah. If you did get stopped, once again, it's up to the officer's discretion. So if you can justify it, there isn't why you're carrying it. So at the time, I've got a big rucksack on my back, a stink of wood smoke, I'm absolutely filthy, and then they stop me and search my bag, and I've got a sleeping bag, a tarp, a roll mat, a knife and an axe in there. It's like, oh, what are you up to? Well, hazard a guess, sunshine. Like, what do you think I'm up to? I've been on a bushcraft course, or I've been out camping or whatever. Then they don't really. I would be surprised if they went, well, we're confiscating it off you. Yeah. Whereas if you're knocking around Tesco's in Chidwell, you know, in your jeans and a t-shirt, and you've got a great big knife on you, yeah, you don't really have a leg to stand on with that. Yeah.
So if that's you carrying out in public, what about at home? Is there?
If it's in your house, hey, it's your house, your private property. Yeah, people collect. There are people that collect knives and swords and all sorts. I know people. I mean, I've never anything I've got into, but people have There are collectors' knives. You know, you can buy the knife from the most recent King Arthur film, and they have the collections of all these different, you know, knives and all samurai swords and all that. You can buy them. It's not illegal to buy them. You just can't be waving them around in a public place. That's where the line stops. Ugh. I'm not sure that the weather really dictates, and there's quite a lot of us as well for using axes, but I'm going to talk about axes, and then we'll go back to knives, and then get you guys to use the knives. I think that's going to be So this is my kind of at-home sharpening kit, and I don't think I've got my in the forest sharpening kit, but that was stupid. But we can run another time then. So these are Japanese waterstones. So these I've got two. This is the very first one I ever used. You can actually see it's got a bit of a where I've used it. It's like the stone has worn away through use, and I cracked it as well. I'm going to pass that one round. But that's two different grits on either side. So I've got a fine grit and a coarse grit there. So there's one stone. I think it's 600 and 1200. I think the higher the number, the finer it is. It goes kind of the opposite of what you would think. Yeah. I haven't got round to it yet, which is why I haven't done it. But I know a lot of people that actually will hacksaw these in half, and then just take half of one as their can, like so you're carrying it. Because you'll feel it. They're quite heavy. So they just take one. And what you can also do, I don't know if you can buy them anymore. They come up every now and again. But the American military used to have these little pots, about yay big, kind of they were almost this shape. They're about that big, kind of from there. And they were for something to do with chemical warfare, something to do with their chemical warfare drills. And you can saw one of these in half and it'll fit in there. They're also watertight, so that because you need to soak these in water before you use them. So you can just take that out, fill it full of water, and let it soak in that pot, and then you've got your kind of transportable water stone kit. I meant to bring one with me, but I haven't actually got. This is the one I'm going to chop in half because I've cracked it. So when I've actually done it, maybe I'll send you guys a picture and you can see it. But I'll pass that around so you can have a look. And then this is my newer one because I cracked that one and I was like, it's just a slightly wider one. You can see there's bits of metal on it from where I've used it. Exactly the same grace. It's just they're both kits as well. It's just, I bought that one 15 years ago and now they make it like this. They just changed the way they make it. Yeah. I mean, you can always strop as well, leather strop. So you just take a piece of leather and you get leather paste. Sometimes you don't even need to sharpen it, you just strop the knife and that will take the barrel. It's all to do with microscopic pieces of metal. It's really complicated. It's something like you have to really read it. It is real science. So, yes, yeah. They just don't mind for them, and it's not worth it for the cost. Now they just synthetically construct.
Are you? Nice.
No, it's any kind of coarse stone. You can literally pick a stone up on the beach and use do the same job.
How big
Just
is
needs something coarse.
That's the wet stone.
Yeah, so what I've got here is I've got a really coarse grit. This is an 800 grit. So that means that one must be it's a 600 and a 1200 I think on that one. So this is a really coarse one. No, it can't be. No, I think that's I think that might be a 900 and a 1200. So it's just a good all-rounder, that one. Whereas this is if I need, you can feel the difference in this. It's much coarser. I mean, I use if I've got any real damage to a blade. This has only been used about 3 times. So if you get real damage to a blade, you need to like hone that edge out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just to get the job done a bit quicker. And then the other piece of kit that goes with the fine side is this. This is called a Naguru stone. And a Naguru stone, what you do, and I'll show you how we do it in a second, because I'll put my knife and I'll give a little edge on it. Still a bit more work on it. Show you how I use it. So, I've got this little device here, which helps. It's got little rubber feet on it, stops it from moving so much. Now take the stone out. It fits on there, like so. It's nice and wet. So, learning to sharpen is an absolute art. It really is quite difficult to learn because it's quite a physical thing. But I'm going to place my blade on the stone and then tip it so I feel it land on the other edge. Yeah? And then all I'm going to do is just go back and forth like so. So lay it flat on there, back and forth. And you can see the stone starts to go grey.
Okay.
Taking off metal. Yeah.
What would you do in the wild if you didn't have that stone?
You could use a normal stone.
Yeah.
You can use a normal stone. It's not as effective, but you could use a normal
But
stone.
it needs to be flat.
Yeah. No, not necessarily, because then I would work on it like this. I would take a stone and work in a circular motion. So then I do the same in the opposite direction. So flat, back and forth.
Can you feel the tension as you do that?
Yeah, you can feel it working the metal away. If it starts to dry out, take a bit of metal. Like so.
You just do that middle bit at the end bit as well. You know?
Yeah, so I'm going to do the end, but best to work the flat edge, yeah, and then I will take this here and I'll work this way.
Yeah. Almost like the way the cave's going.
Yeah.
What qualities in a stone are you looking for?
The grit normally and normally the make. That if not all, it's once again you buy a cheap stone, it's going to be made cheaply.
And if you find it in the wild, I mean?
Oh, in a stone, you want something that's coarse.
Coarse.
Something that's coarse. Something you find on the beach.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then...
Because that looks super smooth, that one.
Yeah, you don't realise just how coarse it is.
Right, okay.
There we go. So, couple there. Yeah, it doesn't sharp now. So then I'm just going to dunk it again. Take it out like so. And then this is where the Naguru stone comes into effect. So what I'm going to do with the Naguru stone is create a really fine paste.
Why the water?
You can use oil. Just water is abundantly useful. But if you use a wet stone and you use it with oil the first time, you can't use water with it ever again. It's then an oil stone. Yeah.
But why use it at all? What is it for?
It just helps to keep the process moving. It's lubricant.
Okay,
basically.
okay. Right.
Helps it to glide.
Yeah, it helps it to glide. Keeps the pores of the stone from being filled up with. Because if you did it and you didn't get it wet, the pores of the stone will fill with the metal, and then it'll go smooth. And you won't be able to use it anymore. So I've got now a fine paste forming on the stone, just to help to hone that edge. This one you're really going to see it, because it's a lighter colour.
My microphone. My microphone is a.
Yeah, you could do. Yeah.
Alex, when you guys are talking, because I'm here, I'm picking up what you guys are saying more than what he's saying. I'm really sorry. Thank you.
Not necessarily, it's just a smaller stone, that's all. You could take another stone and just rub it together. You see the metal coming off? Yeah? I mean, you can't feel it too much, but there's definitely a difference there.
How long's the process normally to do it properly?
10 minutes.
Yeah, literally.
Depends on how much damage you've done to your knife. sometimes you look down the blade and you've got, oh damn, I've got a little nick in there. You see a little gap missing. You're like, right, I've got to work that out. I've got to keep going into it. And that's fixing the damage that guy did to the knife. That's going to take me months and months of just doing it every couple of days. I mean, it could take me a day if I did it from like sun up to sundown.
Right.
But like, just do it every now and again.
Cool.
And then what I would do now is I would come into my other box. Yeah. Take some canola oil. Spray off.
What a day.
Wipe the excess off. Yeah. And that won't rust in its sheath anymore. Because I've just got it wet, haven't I? Because I've put it on the stones and it's carbon steel. So if I just put it in the sheath, tomorrow I'll take this out and it'll be ruined.
You polish the inside of the sheath as well?
No.
Only the outside?
I only put polish on the inside. The inside is a different type of leather, it won't take.
Okay.
It's smooth on the inside and porous on the outside. Porous on the inside, smooth on the outside, so it won't take thing. But then looking after your sheaths, very simple. Just some kiwi shoe polish and a boot brush. That's it. Brush it on, leave it to dry, brush it off. Simple as that. It's not complicated. Same as polishing boots.
What's a polish alternative in the wild? Do you know?
Fat.
Fat, yeah?
Yeah, animal fat. Animal fat. Birch tar. I've done that before on my old sheath. This is a new sheath. I had to get a new sheath for this one.
Okay.
Birch tar works. Anything that's kind of oil based.
Is tar the same as sap?
Sap, no.
Okay.
Sap won't work. That'll just ruin your sheath.
Where does tar come from in the tree?
Birch tar is kind of the oils that are inside the bottle. It's quite a hard process to get out. Well, it's not a hard process. It's a pain in the arse to get out, but it's not a difficult process. It's just a bit complicated. You have to like dig a hole, put an empty tin in the hole, put the tin with the bark in the top, start a fire on top of them, and you kind of bake. You know when we're making charcoal? Basically do that. But you put the tin over an empty tin, and as it chars the bark, the oils leak into the bottom tin. But animal fat is quite often, if you were processing an animal down, if you strip out some of the fat that you can find and put it into a little metal tin or something, put it near the fire so it tallows down into like a liquid. Yeah, you can just rub it in. Yeah, that's all. Boot polish actually is fat.
Right.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Okay. Why is it black?
Well, boot polish, you can get it in loads of different colours. This is brown.
Alright.
You can get transparent. I think I've got a transparent one here.
Oh, you can get transparent, yeah?
Yeah. If I can get it open. Yeah, it's transparent. Well, I know it doesn't look transparent, but it is.
Yeah.
You get it on your finger, it's clear.
Why would you use transparent?
Just because you might not be able to get the colour that you've got. So it's more of an aesthetic thing, really. Yeah. If I had a black knife sheath and a brown axe sheath, maybe I would just take a pot of transparent thing, because then I can use it on both.
Cool, man. And we get a knife.
Any questions?
Yeah, James, you said that earlier, buy like a standard Mora knife for about £10. Do you know what the name of one of them? What of one that you would buy?
It's called a Mora Companion.
Mora Companion.
Mora Companion knife. If you type in Mora knife into Amazon or something like that, it'll be the first one that comes up. They sell. It's their #1 seller, so it'll be the #1 that comes up. Okay. Yeah, it's like 10 quid.
In terms of tools, what other tools are the important ones that we need to know about?
Axes, which we're about to talk about, and potentially saws. A decent saw is always a good one. You can actually do a lot more with a saw than people realise. In some instances, I would take a saw rather than an axe, because you can split wood with a saw. Yeah, it depends. These are all skills that are not. It's not like a one-day thing. These are sort of, you learn to get comfortable with an axe, and then go, right, now I'm going to introduce you to how you can use an axe this way, so on and so forth. Hey, Doggo. Oh, there it is. I knew I put it in here. There we go. So there's another Scandinavian knife, but we were talking about the needle Tang? you can actually see the end of the blade. Yeah, it's pops out the end of the handle there.
That's on purpose.
Yeah. No, it's literally just because that's the construction. Yeah. Whereas in the other one, they've done that, and then put something over the top of it just to make it look a bit prettier. Whereas with this one, they just haven't bothered. This is actually a stacked leather sheath, leather handle. So this handle is actually made of pieces of leather that's been stacked on top of each other and glued together.
Oh wow.
Oh,